We Saved You a Seat is sponsored by the Oklahoma Family Network. Oklahoma Family Network focuses on supporting families of children and youth with special health care needs and disabilities, as well as families who have children with a mental health or behavioral health diagnosis. Oklahoma Family Network provides families with emotional support, resource navigation, parent-to-parent engagement opportunities, and wants to ensure quality health care for all children and families by building strong and effective family-professional partnerships. Today, I'm excited for you to meet Robyn Haynes, proud wife to Travis and mom to Eliza. Robyn and I recorded several podcasts in January and February of 2025, and I'm extremely excited to release them this month in honor of Hydrocephalus Awareness Month. You will absolutely love this series as you get a glimpse of their early experiences and diagnosis journey. We will conclude our series with a current and more recent update. Thank you again for joining us today, as I know you will thoroughly enjoy meeting Robyn Haynes and her family. We have so much to talk about. I am so thankful that you're willing to share. You're not alone, even though I know that sometimes you feel like you are. And I know I have other people in my life that I'm excited to share your story with so that they can meet you and y'all can merge and be very productive in our community together.
Well, I'm honored that you asked me and excited to share a little bit of our story. And I just am really thankful that we're able to do this.
Well, I know I appreciate it. So I always like to tell people kind of how you and I know each other and how we met. And so, gosh, how long has it been?
It was 2019. I started teaching Lena in first grade.
And COVID.
And then COVID hit. Yep.
You had our COVID year. So, yeah. As we were on this Zoom, we're reminiscing about the joys and the trials and the struggles of what that end of that first grade year looked like.
And I actually was thinking before we hopped on here, I was like, okay, I can actually say like the last time we Zoomed and it was doing like sight word activities or something with Lena because we were fully remote. And yeah, that's crazy. It was so long ago.
I know, it really was.
But it feels like it was yesterday at the same time, weirdly.
So true. Oh my word, so true. Yeah, so as we've kind of come full circle where, we became Facebook friends and I got to hear a little bit and you shared a little bit about your birth story and how I know my daughter was very excited to get you a baby shower gift, and then life happened and we didn't get it to you in time, and disappointed to not get it to you before birth. Kind of missed an opportunity to really just love on you because you loved on my daughter through a really rough year. And as we come together and share parts of your story, because I know I was really touched by it and I know others will be as well. You started sharing part of your story on Facebook, and that was actually how I kind of learned about your beautiful girl's diagnosis and some of your experiences. So I'm wondering if we can just start out going back to day one, tied to the excitement of having a baby and then snowballing into this, oh my gosh, what's happening now?
Okay, buckle yourself in. Here we go. So found out I was pregnant spring break of 2023. We found out super early, and we kind of had to keep the secret for quite a while. I was finishing up the school year, first trimester. Teaching first graders was rough because I was so exhausted, but honestly, kind of looking back, I was like, man, that was like the easiest part of my pregnancy in some ways, just because we, did the, blood work with what had the gender. And then it also had, some of the more common birth defects that it tested for. And, all that came back negative. And all we knew was it was a girl and we were thrilled. And so that was in June. When we found out the gender. And then end of June, it was it was the day before our anniversary. So our 4th anniversary was my anatomy scan. And I was 18 weeks at the time. And honestly, it was my first pregnancy. We were very naive about a lot of things. You just don't know, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what to expect. You don't know like what things are for. I didn't really know what the point of the anatomy scan was other than like, hey, we're gonna see our baby, So I didn't really, I guess, know that it could be, there could be bad news, I guess, after this ultrasound. And I guess there could be after, any ultrasound, but I think 18 to 20 weeks is kind of when a lot of, birth defects or, conditions or whatever become more apparent. And so I mean, that's part of why you do the anatomy scan is because they're looking for, just any kind of irregularities. So did my anatomy scan, got all the cute pictures, drove home, texted them to our family. And I remember getting a call from my OB and she asked if I was home. I was like, yeah, I'm home. And that was, the first clue that, something's wrong. And so she, said, I can't even remember, the exact words, but all I remember was she said hydrocephalus. And I was thinking, what in the world is that? Because I never heard of it. And interestingly enough, hydrocephalus is as common as Down syndrome, which is crazy to me because I think I've had to probably like 50% or more of people who, I talk to about Eliza, I have to explain, what hydrocephalus is because it's so just not known. And I'm like, everybody knows what Down syndrome is. So that's kind of wild to me. But anyway, so she quickly kind of told me like hydrocephalus. And then she said, I want you to get another ultrasound it's called the perinatal center at Mercy. And she said, I'm going to call you right back. So just stay right there. So my husband and I, because he was sitting right there with me. And so I told him. And so we, of course, start Googling because we're like, what is this? Which was probably not the wisest decision. But at the same time, it's like, well, what do you expect us to do? So there are so many different forms of hydrocephalus that we didn't necessarily get an accurate answer as to what exactly we were dealing with. So all we knew it was, it was fluid on the brain. And then I do remember seeing, I remember seeing the words low chance of positive outcomes or something like that. So like something like, pretty bad. And so my OB calls me back and is like, okay, I have you, or like he can see you tomorrow at such and such time. Does this work? And I was like, of course. I mean, it honestly doesn't work, but like we're going to make it work because nothing else really matters at this point. And she said, okay, good. And she said, don't Google anything. It was like, well, it's too late. But here we are. So I just said, okay. And then that was it. My OBGYN is, just in a regular office. And the office that we went to the next day was a high risk clinic. So we go in, we get the hydrocephalus diagnosis confirmed, and the doctor that we saw there, like he has had other hydrocephalus cases, and he was actually like probably the most optimistic of, and honestly, we saw him I think twice, and the appointments run together. Like I can't distinguish, which one was at which, but he was the most positive out of all of the providers, like all of the maternal fetal medicine providers that we encountered. And so, I mean, he was honest, and was like, here's the situation. You're probably going to need to see a pediatric neurosurgeon as soon as she's born. And at this point, I think that her condition wasn't so severe, which I guess I need to like rewind and kind of explain a little bit about what hydrocephalus is for any listeners who don't know what it is, because I bet there are some out there that don't. So hydrocephalus is a condition that occurs whenever you have an abnormal buildup of cerebrospinal fluid in your brain. So everybody has a certain amount of fluid that's just always circulating. It's produced in your brain and then it circulates through your brain. It kind of acts as a lubricant, and there's other functions functions as well. But then your body is supposed to kind of drain it. It drains into the rest of your body and then is just expelled, or, however your body gets rid of things. So I mean, that's how your body's supposed to work, I guess. I don't really know how it works because Eliza's doesn't work how it's supposed to. So in Eliza's case and the case of anybody that has hydrocephalus, for whatever reason, your brain, or like the fluid builds up in your brain faster than it can drain out of it. So in some cases, and honestly, there's a lot of unknown still out there about hydrocephalus. And so I guess the best hypothesis is that some people overproduce CSF, and that's why it builds up faster than it drains. There are conditions that are accompanied by hydrocephalus. So like spina bifida, Chiari malformations, Dandy Walker syndrome are just a couple of them. And hydrocephalus occurs there for different reasons. But in cases like Eliza's, we don't have another diagnosis for her. All we have is the hydrocephalus. And so we don't really have a reason that it happened, like 100% this is why this happened. And so the suspected cause is called aqueduct stenosis. And what that means is the aqueduct or like the passageway where the fluid flows to kind of go to the rest of your body, that passageway is narrowed or blocked by something. And we still don't know, we don't know exactly why that happens. I know that there's genetic conditions that can cause, hydrocephalus. Like I said, there are conditions that I listed earlier, but yeah, we don't know for certain at this point why this happened, and which is a whole, kind of a whole struggle in itself, just like wondering, like, did I do something when I was pregnant, or why is this happening? Like, why is this happening to our kid when it's like so rare? Then we just move on from that and it is what it is. So anyway, so going back to our diagnosis, at our first ultrasound, and the way that they diagnose hydrocephalus in utero is with the ventricle measurement. And so they look at the head circumference because when kids get hydrocephalus in utero, their head grows faster than it should for obvious reasons because the fluid is building up. But they also look at the lateral ventricle measurements, and her ventricles were big enough that they could diagnose, but not so big that we thought that, or like we were automatically going to need pediatric neurosurgery for sure at that point. So then when I went back for I think I went back in a month, and her ventricles had grown enough that he said, you're going to have to deliver at OU Children's. You're going to have to be seen by peds neuro as soon as she's born, because I think it had pushed her into the severe enough range that like they were going to have to intervene right away. I think this is less common, but there are hydrocephalus cases where they don't intervene right away. And sometimes hydrocephalus isn't diagnosed until after birth. So that's one reason why your kids pediatricians will take your head circumference, is they're measuring is their head on the growth curve, or is it growing a lot faster than it should, because that can be an indication that there's fluid building up. So Dr. Mirabile, who we were seeing at Mercy, referred us to OU. We really appreciated that he, because normally the techs do the ultrasounds and then the doctors look at the, images or look at the reports or whatever, and then, can make a diagnosis or whatever from there. But we really appreciated that he came in and actually, moved the wand around and looked at things himself, just I guess to be extra sure, that he was seeing the same thing and that he was giving us just kind of an accurate picture of what we were dealing with. So, like I said before, he was, honest about, it's not going to be easy, but he, was very optimistic. And from what we've kind of gleaned from all of this is there are hydrocephalus patients who have, severe limitations and disabilities. And then there are hydrocephalus patients who go to med school and graduate top of their class. And then that means there's also a lot in between. And I feel like he painted a really good picture of that for us. And honestly, like we only saw him twice, but that was kind of one reason why we kind of made it through the rest of my pregnancy with some hope, I guess, because we did go to OU Children's for the remainder of my pregnancy. And I do want to say, like, I got really excellent care from the NP who, just saw me for my regular OB visits. And I actually went to therapy there for a while, just, because it was a really, really tough situation that we had found ourselves in. However, and I think that like hydrocephalus, while it is as common as Down syndrome, like I mentioned, I think that it's rare enough that there's a lot of maybe like misinformation or like lack of understanding when it comes to MFMs, which are maternal fetal medicine specialists, high risk OBs. And I think something that I kind of realized is that OBs and MFMs really function for like mom's health, mom's experience. They're going to give you recommendations that are good for, for baby. Like, they'll like don't smoke or like, don't eat sushi or, whatever the recommendation is. But when it comes to really like intricate, nuanced, individualized diagnoses and prognoses for preborn, unborn babies, they're not the expert. So Dr. Mirable actually got me connected with another mom of a hydrocephalus thriver, I guess. She's not just a survivor, but another hydrocephalus patient. And that was something that she told me was you have to take what they say with a grain of salt because and she had told us that before we had our first ultrasound there. But my first appointment, the doctor just said the word severe neurological dysfunction over and over and over again. I think he probably said it 10 times at least. And then the second doctor that we saw said, you may have some time with her. And so we're kind of in this place of like, well, this first doctor we saw, told us that like, maybe like she'll be fine, but then now these people are acting like she's going to die. And so we don't know who to believe. But of course, like my brain is going to go to the worst case scenario. And I think that's kind of like a survival, mechanism that our brains just kind of do. But that also meant that I spent the entire second half of my pregnancy, fearing for her life. I didn't want a baby shower. I didn't want maternity pictures. Like I didn't want to get her nursery ready because all of those things felt like hoping for something that I didn't know if it was going to happen for us, which I did all the things and I'm so glad that I did. But, it was the hardest thing that we've ever been through in our lives. And, we also met with the NICU, like a neonatologist before she was born, and we met with pediatric neurosurgery. And the reason I feel confident in like saying the things that I'm saying about MFMs are not necessarily the experts when it comes to pediatric, situations is because I have a document somewhere in our files on like in OU's server where the PA from the peds neuro office writes, you cannot make prognoses based on fetal ultrasounds. Is she going to survive? What's her life going to be like? And in our conversation with her, I kind of got the idea that we were not the first people who had gone up, to peds neuro for a consult and thought there's no hope here, which makes me sad. Not to say, Eliza's life has been full of challenges and there have been lots of tears, but there's also been a lot of joy and a lot of wins and a lot of overcoming. You and I have talked about how I've had to lean really heavily on my faith through all of this. it's hard to like separate our situation from that because I believe that there have been miraculous things that have happened in Eliza's life. So I guess I want people to know that and I don't want to give people false hope because there are situations where the prognosis is fatal. And so I'm not saying like, don't believe anything your doctors say. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. But I guess I just want to encourage anybody who's going through something like this to think about like who the experts are and also just like hold on to hope and hold on to purpose, I guess, that there's a purpose in everything. And I don't know, it's easy to just want to give up. And I just want you to, not give up.
After reviewing our conversation together, Robyn asked me to clarify that she absolutely believes fetal ultrasounds do help diagnose a lot of conditions accurately. She asked me to share that she believes the note the PA wrote and spoke about specifically refer to Eliza's hydrocephalus condition, and wants to remind all families who receive a hydrocephalus diagnosis in utero to remember there are many variables and working with an entire pediatric team can make all the difference. This is only the beginning of my conversation with Robyn. We discuss so much more and hope you will join us in our next few releases highlighting hydrocephalus awareness. Thank you for listening to this episode of We Saved You a Seat. Oklahoma Family Network promotes family-centered care and provides tools so families can make informed decisions, advocate for improved services, build connections among families, and serve as a trusted resource in health care of children and young adults. If you would like to become a supporting family or get in touch with another family, please contact Oklahoma Family Network at oklahomafamilynetwork.org or by calling 405-271-5072.